Members, I'm going to advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode. All devices are to be muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. Clerk, are you aware of any apologies?
No.
No apologies. We will have a member hopefully joining us via Zoom. That will be Michelle McElveen. Agenda item 2, declaration.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Maybe I would put in an apology for Michelle in case she's not coming, maybe on
Yes.
Zoom today either. She did ask for the connections, but she might not be well enough actually to come on to Zoom actually today. So we'll put in an apology for now at this stage.
Just in case.
Yes.
Not a bother.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Agenda item 2 then, members. I remind you of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Does any member have any interest to declare in relation to any of today's agenda items? No. Okay. Turning to chairperson's business. Members, I refer to page 6 of the pack to correspondence dated the 21st of January from the Minister regarding the Department's analysis of the impact of the changes to inheritance tax allowance thresholds. The Department's assessment of the impact starts on page 8 of your pack. Members, as you will be aware, in December, the UK Government announced that the threshold for agricultural property relief and business property relief combined at a rate of 100% will be increased from 1 million to 2.5 million before the policy changes come into effect in April. The Department estimates that based on the £2.5 million threshold, a total of 4,517 farms, or 17.5% of total farms in Northern Ireland could be impacted, equating to around 48.8% of the total area farmed. This compares with around 50% of all farms that would have been impacted, equating to 80% of total land farmed based on the original proposed £1 million threshold. The Minister states he will continue to urge the UK Government to fully remove the family farm tax, and I'm sure the committee would support him in that, and if necessary to ensure support is in place, particularly for the elderly and terminally ill who cannot plan for the change. And we do know, members, we've spoken about this many times, that the age demographic in farming would indicate that that would be a significant priority. Have you any comments? Members, are you content to note?
Chair, I just think the committee should weigh in, certainly underline our support for getting rid of this tax. It's causing a lot of uncertainty and unease in the farming community, and whilst this is a step in the right direction, it needs to be removed. Because the note that we have here from the department quite rightly indicates that it's difficult for people to tax plan, particularly if people are elderly, and also as well, there's also an issue where there's no spouse or civil partner involved as well for passing on, and also the £21,000 that they've put down as the value per acre. Like, land values fluctuate. So it does. So again, that adds more uncertainty going forward. So I suggest that we reiterate our opposition to this farm family tax.
Yeah, I'm content with it. And actually, the point you make about the land value is, I think the average is probably in around 30,000 plus now, which would mean, if that is the case, then that obviously skews the figure. Where they're talking about 17.5% of farms and the 48% of land. It's going to be bigger than that. And as machinery prices, animal prices, all of those things rise, this is not a fixed item. Tom?
Yeah, Chair. Just to agree with that, because it's going to have a detrimental, even at what it's at now at this moment in time, it's going to still have a detrimental impact on the farming community and the farm businesses within Northern Ireland, and therefore I think we need to keep the pressure on that this must go. It's not acceptable in any shape or form, no matter how they try to dress it up.
So the committee's agreed that we will respond to the communication from the department, just supporting the minister, but also just reaffirming that we're absolute in this. And I think it's always good when Stormont can do that, isn't it? When we can coalesce around something.
And letter to the minister.
Letter to the minister, yes, please. Okay. Thank you, Clerk. Okay, item number 2 then, members. Refer you to page 15 to 22 of the pack for the 25-26 Spring Supplementary Estimate Memorandum, dated the 13th of January from the Permanent Secretary. The supplementary estimate is at page 23 to 38. The SSE memorandum outlines variances and key drivers of spending changes since the 25-26 main estimate and an explanation of spending trends since 23-24. I will highlight a few main points for the record. Members, regarding the resource DEL, DAERA has an overall £69.2 million increase in resource DEL compared to 25-26 main estimate position. During the year, an additional 80.8 million Resourcedale was allocated. This included 63 million HM Treasury funding to administer the Windsor frameworks. That isn't DAERA money, it's directly from HM Treasury. 7.9 million for depreciation, 5 million for the AIP including Loughney, 3.2 million for bovine TB programme delivery, 1.4 million for employer national insurance costs, and 0.3 million in respect of Peace Plus. As part of the December monitoring round, the Department identified 11.2 million of reduced requirements. Interestingly, 4.9 million from staff cost budgets, primarily due to the delay in filling vacancies, and we've been hot and heavy on that, trying to find solutions and ask questions. 3.4 million in respect of Peace Plus and 2.9 million of HMT funding. So members, regarding the Capital Dale, DAERA had an overall £8.1 million increase in Capital Dale when compared to the 25-26 estimates. During the year, 11.3 HMT funding was allocated in relation to the cost of administering the Windsor framework. As part of the December monitoring round, 2.7 million of this funding was returned to HMT, partly as a result of slippage in a release at the Larne facility to 26-27. As members will recall, the Finance Committee have considered that we respond to them with any issues in relation to DAERA's 25-26 budget position by the end of February, and as part of our budget scrutiny, we'll have an oral briefing from the Department's Finance Director, Roger Downey. Hopefully in the next few weeks we may explore DAERA's management of the 25-26 budget and also the proposed multi-year budget. Members, have you any comments, or are you content to note that until we get further briefing? Thank you, members. Item number 3 referred to page 4 of the table of papers to correspondence from the Minister regarding the first Environmental Improvement Plan, otherwise known as EIP, the annual progress report that was laid before the Assembly on Monday past. A copy of that annual progress report starts at page 5 of table papers. That APR summarises progress in implementing the EIP actions and outlines environmental trends through the Outcome Indicator Framework. The Minister also advises that the Office of Environmental Protection will publish its assessment of the state of the natural environment, including a review of the APR within 6 months. Have you any comments, or are you content to note at this stage? Thank you, members. Item number 4, you refer you to the invitation which we noted last week to the launch of the RISE programme on Wednesday the 4th of February at Ancraigan in Omagh. The organisers have been in contact again as a reminder, and any members who wish to attend can register individually by tomorrow. Reliably informed by the Deputy Chair that you can call his house, either on the way there or the way back, for a cup of tea and a scone. Fair, Declan?
Bring your own scones.
Bring your own scones. All right, members. Okay, members, you will have seen the email sent by the clerk to you all yesterday afternoon regarding the new evidence we have received regarding the ban on periwinkle gathering introduced by SR 2026/1, which was the Shellfish Gathering Conservation Regulations Northern Ireland 2026. The ERA Committee considered and agreed the SL1 on the 11th of December after a briefing from officials which was recorded by Hansard. That is attached. And on the 15th of January, the Committee agreed the SR subject to the report of Examiner of Statutory Rules. The email from the clerk includes the Hansard of our SL1 session, which records that I clearly pushed the officials on any potential impacts. The letter from Seafresh and a series of subsequent emails, which are still coming in this morning, together with the new evidence, appears to provide evidence contrary to the responses given by the officials that the ban on fishing for periwinkles for the number of months per year in the SR would have limited impact on the industry. That is being contested by some people, and I spoke to a representative of Seafresh yesterday. So members, do you have any comments to make on that before I set out a series of proposals on that? And just for context, through the Chairperson's Liaison Group, we have successfully negotiated a change to how committees deal with SRs. So this was the last SR that we will have got in that truncated, compressed manner. So it meant that we had very little time, obviously, to consider it. So the new process, if this was coming through, we would have a number of weeks to consider it and then call witnesses. So this is something that shouldn't happen again. But has anybody got any comments to make before I offer out what I see as a potential next step for this committee? Okay. So I propose, members, that we hold a single agenda item on Monday, that we reach out to the departmental officials, we reach out to witnesses on both the organisations side and also on the conservation environment side, and seek views and evidence from each party to allow this committee to carry out its due diligence and decide on the next step that can be taken. What I would say is that it is absolutely imperative that we hold that meeting on Monday, given the date that this would come into law is the 10th of February. So if this committee wanted to take any action, it would have until 12 o'clock on Tuesday, roughly, to take action on that, if it deemed that action was necessary. Are members content with that approach? Clark, could I just ask then, with the conversation we had earlier about even the WhatsApp group, just make sure that all of the members are aware that this is a significant meeting for them on Monday. We will hold that. What time's the room held for at the moment?
The room is booked from 9:30 to sort of...
Okay, I'm very aware, guys, half 9, half 11. So I'm very aware, members, that we have our party meetings at that time. However, we will need to have it at that time on Monday morning between 9:30 and 11:30, and it probably will take an hour and a half minimum. So if you could do your utmost to be here, we will need to have quorum if we're having a formal meeting. Okay.
Starting at 9:30.
It's up to committee chair what time. It depends what time later in the
So I
morning.
know for some of you guys it can be because you're coming like a 2.5 hour drive to be here, but I would intend starting it at 9:30 with a 15-minute buffer there. And if you could communicate with WhatsApp or whatever, let me know. If you're running late, I will do my best to hold it back, because I'd prefer to have as many members here if we're making a decision. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you very much, members. Okay, agenda item 4 is the minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of January. Members, I refer you to the draft minutes for our meeting on the 22nd of January, starting at page 40 of your pack. Have you any comments? Are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if so, I will sign them for publishing on the website. Excellent. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 5, matters arising. Item number 1, I referred to page 55 of the pack for a response from the department dated the 22nd of January regarding the interrelation between the statutory rules introduced relating to the rollout of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, otherwise known as SAP. Members, you will recall at our meeting on the 11th of December, we requested a clear picture of the interrelationships between the various obligations, grants and potential penalties that are found within the suite of SRs contained within the SAP. I also refer you to table papers to number 1, a diagram setting out the legislative landscape for SAP, which is at page 287, and a flow chart showing how the range of requirements, conditions and penalties are applied to the farm sustainability payment, starting at page 288. The department has also provided details of the primary powers for the legislative basis for the SAP and details of the subordinate legislation already brought forward to date in relation to the SAP schemes. Members, I was particularly interested in getting that flow chart. It is complex and complicated even to look at, but I do believe it simplifies and puts everything on a couple of pages for members to look at and see where the correlation is, because sometimes it can be a wee bit confusing, particularly when we're looking at penalties and scale. Deputy Chair.
Chair, I welcome these here. It's easy to look at a glance, because the whole SAP is obviously very technical and complex, and this helps to understand it at a glance. And I'm wondering, is it possible that this could be communicated to the farming community as well? Even through the Deer Online, because I know, certainly any farmers I know, they're that busy that they haven't the time to sit down and read through complicated policies and legislation. But the likes of this would be something that they could look at a glance that may be helpful. So is that something that we could suggest to the department, if it could be communicated even through Deer Online to farmers?
Yeah, I think it's good. It's something I would have used back in a former job, just for remembering things, because you can't remember everything. But a flowchart, a ready reckoner, is really useful. You can carry it about with you if you need it. It's not hard it's easy carried rather than paragraphs of jargon. Clark, would you be clear enough on that, and would the members be content with that approach?
Yeah. I think even also given the fact that the FSP application window is opening now at the beginning of March, so that maybe this could be good timing.
But it is, and the other thing in terms of the system behind that, if they can do it, it's important that they keep it updated, because there will be date changes, so it can become time bound. So in that system, I don't think it's that hard to set up now, to be fair.
And given the fact that virtually all of the single farm payment or FSP applications are online, it could be communicated through that channel even.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, members content?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Declan. Item number 6 then is the oral evidence session from Agri-Food and Bioscience Institute on the data breach response. So we've got some seats set out there, guys, with your names on them, and please sit where your names are so that I don't call somebody by the wrong name. And my eyesight's not great, so I'm actually having to squint now to read your names up there. So Nuala, and then Grace, Stanley, and Jenny. Okay. Okay, members, I refer you to the pack, which starts at page 64, to the briefing paper, which provides background, key issues and actions taken in relation to the data breach incident at AFBI. I also refer you to the AFBI internal audit report, the data breach investigation, on the 18th of December 2025, starting at page 72 of your pack. So members, I now welcome the following AFBI officials to the meeting and invite them to brief the committee. We have Professor Grace Mulcahy, Chair of AFBI. We have Dr. Stanley McDowell, Chief Executive Officer of AFBI. We have Mrs. Nuala Macaulay, Director, Financial and Corporate Affairs Division, and Mrs. Jenny Burrows, Interim Director of Digital Data Technology Transformation Programme. We're going to have to truncate that one and call it the DDTT programme. Okay, if you would like to brief the committee, we welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to attend. You've already done part of my job, which is introducing the members, but I'll just augment a little bit. So, Grace Mulcahy, I've been Chair of the AFBI Board since November 2025. Nuala Macaulay is here as Director of Finance and Corporate Affairs Division. We have, of course, Stanley McDowell, our CEO, and Jenny Burrows has been seconded to us from SIB, and she's leading out on our Digital Data and Technology Transformation Programme. So I'll hand over now to Stanley, who I think will provide a briefing.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Grace, for the introduction on it. We provided a briefing documentation in advance of today's meeting and enclosed the independent investigation report of the incident, which was undertaken by AFBI's internal audit provider. I wonder if I can, just in a few minutes, maybe to summarise the background to the data breach and how it happened, the action which the organisation has taken to manage and mitigate the impact of the breach, and some of the key findings and recommendations from the independent investigation. The data breach itself came to light following the receipt of a media inquiry on the 2nd of October 2025, which made reference to data issued by AFBI in response to an FOI request in 2024. Review of that request raised concern that information had been incorrectly released, and we immediately activated our data breach procedures. It was very quickly established that personal data had been disclosed in error in response to an FOI request in March 2024. In terms of what happened, and in brief, in providing an answer to the FOI request, data had been extracted from a laboratory database into Excel format. It had been further filtered to obtain the requested information. And while personal data was redacted for visible records, due to the application of filters, reviewers and approvers did not observe, as part of their review process, that the spreadsheet contained other records and contained personal data for those records. I think following discovery of the breach, we moved very quickly and took a number of immediate actions, including notification of our sponsor department and the board, etc., investigation of the circumstances of the breach, notification issued to those whose data had been identified, informers and others. Those letters issued or communications issued on Saturday the 4th of October. We also wrote to the recipient of the data on Saturday the 4th of October, reminding of their data protection obligations and asked them to delete the data which had been issued in error. We mobilised a dedicated call and email handling facility, and that was really operational from the following Monday on it, and there was a quite extensive liaison with key industry stakeholders in the days and weeks that followed. In line with statutory requirements, we submitted a data breach report to the Information Commissioner's Office, who are the statutory body, as you're probably aware, responsible for data governance and information governance. That was submitted on the 3rd of October, the day following the breach. The ICO subsequently notified AFBI on the 15th of October that, having considered the evidence that we provided, that they had decided to close the case and provide advice to us. In addition to the actions taken to manage and mitigate the impact of the breach, there were also internal investigations undertaken, and the board and myself commissioned an independent investigation from our internal audit provider. That's an external company that provides audit services to us. That internal audit report finds that overall, in general, AFBI had well-designed controls in place for the management of the FI request. They also concluded that the inappropriate release of personal information was primarily the result of human error rather than deficiencies in design or absence of controls. I think just at this stage I want to, and as we have in our public statements, as we have to individual farmers, to apologise for the breach, to the fact that data subjects. We sincerely apologise that it happened. It shouldn't have. But as an organisation, we're absolutely committed to implementing the recommendations from the internal audit investigation, which strengthen the controls that were already in place and which are aimed at reducing the likelihood of non-compliance and human error in further cases. We have, for example, taken a number of immediate steps, including requiring mandatory refresher training for all staff and sessions with information asset owners. And I'll maybe stop at that point, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, just to get the timeline, Stanley, if that's okay, would I be right in, I shouldn't ask the close question because you could just say yes or no, but would it be right, and please confirm, that the data, the data the data breach was a year from the point of the Freedom of Information request and the information being sent out to the point that it was AFBI were alerted that there had been a data breach?
It's more than that. It was the data released only to the data subject. It was not actually material that was placed on our website. So this was not material that was openly available in terms of the internet. It went to the recipient of the FI request in March 2024 and was identified as a data breach following that media inquiry in October 2025.
A year and a half, and there was a second request for information from that.
There was a second request from the same recipient in October 2024. Individuals at that time, in reviewing the second request, were aware that personal data had been released, but did not identify it as a data breach, and it was not elevated to the executive management team.
That particular point that internally someone recognised that there had been the sharing of inappropriate information, what actually happened at that stage? What was the process in AFBI then to rectify that? Was the person who had identified that aware that there was a pathway and should have been that structured?
The internal audit investigation does spend a little bit of time on that particular question. Effectively, while there's a recognition of personal data being included in the first one, unfortunately the staff involved did not raise that as a data breach in line with what is normal formal procedures, and therefore as an executive, and as an organisation, we were not able to respond at that point in time.
And what has been done since that point to rectify that at all levels within AFBI?
There was immediate, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, there was immediate sort of mandatory refresher training of all staff, which was done literally within days. We had a session with our senior management team on the Monday on it, and around information asset owners and their responsibilities within this. And there's been a number of in-person sessions with information asset owners to more fully go through what their responsibilities are in relation to issues. And that is an ongoing. We've obviously just received the internal audit report just shortly before December. They've made a number of further, I think, very useful recommendations around strengthening our controls, and we're in the process of working through that.
Okay. I'm not sure if this was in the remit of the investigation because it sits slightly outside of AFBI, but I'd be very interested to know, or if you're aware, the information that was passed through the Freedom of Information request, did it leak out further from the origin that it went to? Are you aware?
There was some information which was contained with the media inquiry on the 2nd of October. That media inquiry was in relation to foodborne pathogens and antimicrobial resistance within the food chain, and that referred to some data which was used within the FOI.
Okay. I'm going to just turn just a couple of short questions then in regard to the people that have been affected by this. So obviously there's an ongoing piece of work between those that have been affected and what constitutes justice, if you like, for them. What steps have AFBI taken in regard to ongoing information and support in and around, I know this is impacted particularly in and around the mental health of a lot of people whose data was shared?
There was immediate sort of telephone and email help desk set up, and that operated for a number of weeks. I don't know, Jenny, if you want to come in a little bit more detail just around the particular arrangements in place and the sort of questions that may have come up from farmers.
Okay, so yes, on the Monday the 6th of October, we mobilised a call centre effectively, and details of that were issued in the letter to the data subjects, so they were able to contact us immediately. That call centre, it's actually still operational, but we received calls for 1 month. So that first week we received 24 calls, down to 13, 12 and then 8. So that's so 57 calls in total from affected subjects. The nature of some of those calls really were quite typical, and what we would have expected. Who was the requester? Who was my data shared with? Was there any sensitive data? We were able to, or any financial sensitive data, or any special category data. We were able to confirm that there was no banking or any financial data had been shared. And then also just requesting, how did it happen, and wanting more details around that. We were able to share information around for anybody who we did determine was, as you say, Chair, was in distress, just the rural crime or the rural safety support group, details that they would have and refer them to them as well. So,
this is a question I ask, not just in this space, but I think it's really important because sometimes when we set up these help desks, that requires someone who has either been impacted or hurt to reach out. Did AFBI actually do a proactive piece of work in this, in ensuring that they did contact every single person that was affected in that data breach and make an offer of help?
Yeah. Well, the letter to all affected subjects went to all affected subjects that issued on it, and within that there was the categories across farmers through to some of the commercial entities that were referred, and indeed to private veterinary practitioners. There were no personal or sensitive data in relation to them. There was also a lot of proactive engagement with industry stakeholders, really from that weekend, key industry stakeholders. We consulted with the PSNI in relation to it and made them aware just in case there was any issues that they needed to consider within it. And there was specific in terms of for a small number of individuals in terms of the media aspect, there was direct either offer or engagement with them. So a lot of engagement, and also, with the commercial entities within the data breach, there was proactive reaching out to them in terms of discussions with some of the...
Everybody has been contacted,
yes,
and offered help. Obviously everybody will be contacted to alert them, but an offer and the avenues and where to go. Thank you very much. Declan?
No, I'm okay.
Happy enough? Okay. John? John?
Chair, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the presentation today and the information provided beforehand. Can I ask, on the basis that human error and our perception of that phrase by their very nature imply one person as a human error, but often in a large organisation, I've been down this road before in another large organisation where I sat on an oversight board, where there was a significant data breach, which is still often in the news. You'll know the one I mean. But in this instance, what assessment was done and what actions were taken in relation to the chain of people who might be involved in a human error? I'm assuming that before information was released, people at different grades or in different business areas would have had sight of what was being released and would have authorised the release of the information. So can I ask how that was treated in the aftermath of this becoming clear?
There's effectively 3 steps in the process. The first is in relation to the extraction of data from the primary database on it. It then passes through our information governance team in terms of review, and then through approval by a senior manager. And as is referred to in the internal audit report, the errors were effectively through the team member in the information governance who reviewed it, who did not recognise that there was other records within the data set. And indeed from the approver of that, the senior manager approver, similarly did not recognise. So yes, you're absolutely right that in any sort of governance sequence, there's a number of steps and processes, and you hope and expect that those steps, that, issues will be detected along this. And this is a combination of errors by more than one individual in terms of that sequence and dealing with it. In terms of how we're dealing with that, we've had further sessions, as I mentioned, with information asset owners in terms of ensuring that there is restrictions in terms of what they supply to the information governance team. And that's really important. So some of this primary data doesn't go to our information governance team within that. And as is referred to in the internal audit report, around putting that responsibility on the person who holds the data in the first place to ensure that anything that should be redacted is redacted on it. And secondly, in terms of information governance team, that should they have information passed to them like that effectively is rejected and goes back to the primary person to redact on it. And then reinforcing the message within those who are approving these types of things to do that. They're also, and it is on the back of another well-known data breach, reinforcing around the conversion of spreadsheet data to CSV files. That is, accepted and recommended as part of the information governance process. That actually happened in this case, but disappointingly, there did not appear to be a subsequent review of the CSV file post the conversion into CSV. And there's probably an issue in terms of the sequence of those who's approving it, just ensuring that they're actually seeing the final version, not a slightly earlier version on it.
Can we be, Chair, again, can we be assured that the person responsible as the data owner in the first instance in a line management system, which is obviously common in public life, whilst they will be responsible for the redaction of any information at the outset, that those responsible for their management will also have a duty to check that that redaction was done by the person they manage?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those are typically what are senior managers within the organisation. They are the designated information asset owners for their branches, and they absolutely have a responsibility within that chain to ensure that what has come from a business area is redacted in the format before it goes to the information governance team, which effectively is a second check. And the third check is with the final approver, who again is a senior manager in the organisation. And they've got the responsibility to ensure that the checks earlier in the chain have been undertaken and done.
And it'll be clearly written down, defined somewhere that this is now the process, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, John. And Aoife.
Thank you, and thanks for your oral briefing. It's been very useful. Just in terms of, you've said here that you have engaged with everybody who has been affected, and I would imagine that has been successful engagement with every single person. Like, there's nobody has not been, you've tried to engage and didn't get a response. Would I be right?
Well, we've issued letters to the affected data subjects in terms of farmers. And, as I mentioned in response to one of the earlier questions, there was a lot of proactive engagement with key industry stakeholders, as you would expect, and with a number of the commercial entities within it.
And you've said that whenever you were reaching out to them, that you said offered help. What did that help look like?
In terms of the farmer constituent, that was in terms of access to the helpline, which Jenny had referred to earlier, and in terms of being able to, when somebody receives a letter like that, obviously, there's a range of emotions there in terms of what it. A lot of it is often about, well, what if my data was released? What actually was that? So some of it was in terms of clarification. What was this about? Obviously, some of the information was a little bit historical, and they may not have remembered some of the laboratory test results. In other cases, it was very genuine. Was any of my financial data? Is any issue around financial data? And that we were able to reassure around that. In terms of those that maybe were more emotionally affected, it was offer of signposting those individuals to other sources of support. So there's a range of questions that we dealt with. That was through individual staff, and they in turn had access to other members of the team or a senior member of AFBI in terms of there any further queries that we needed to answer.
And at any stage, can you confirm whether compensation is being offered by those impacted by the AFBI breach?
Yeah.
either by AFBI or the department.
We're obviously following legal advice in relation to letters which have been sent in to us, and we continue to follow legal advice in relation to those particular cases, and we keep the situation under review in terms of what's there. But there's, I hope you understand, and there's a legal
Yes,
process there, and I'm slightly cautious in getting into further
just
detail
if you don't
around
mind,
that.
Chair, just one more question. You had said that the recipient of this information had been emailed or certainly requested for them to delete the information and come back, and they didn't respond, and then legal correspondence was sent and still no response. Is that still the case? And if so, what does that mean for the information that has the information that they now hold?
Unfortunately, the recipient, we only have an email address for them,
Right.
but we've taken legal advice in relation to, there's been the original letter from ourselves, there's been a letter from the legal team, and we further asked the question of the Information Commissioner's Office. So we've taken legal advice in terms of our options, and unfortunately, when we only have an email address, there's limitations in terms of further steps that can be undertaken.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask what implications the breach had will have for the farmers and the businesses whose obviously personal details went out there?
In terms of the different aspects to that one, to it, names and addresses of farmers, there are some certainly that can be accessed publicly on it, so that in itself. In terms of the information related to salmonella isolations occurs in animal species. That in itself is not occurs in a range of animal species, not particularly newsworthy. And while obviously I understand that farmers may not want that data to be in the public domain or certainly into a data recipient, and that should not have happened. It's unlikely to have individual impacts on farmers, given that this is something that occurs on farms.
Okay, and with regards to the breach, and we're not going to point the finger at anybody where a breach happens, because that happens, and there's personal error or whatever. How many people would have been involved in that? From the information was requested and somebody put it together, and who else? How many more people were scrutinised that, if you like, before that it was actually released to the person that had asked for it?
Effectively, there's three key parts to it. There's the original business unit. So there's an individual within that business unit who had extracted the data from it. And then they had passed it to the information governance team. So there's one individual within the information governance team that was dealing with it, and then there's the final approver. So effectively there's three parties to this and three individuals in that process.
I know you touched on this, so you have strengthened that now in a sense going forward to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again if possible.
And that's very much in terms of reinforcing training of people, mandatory training of people, so the general awareness around data protection. I think particularly around the responsibilities of the information asset owner. So this is a manager within, effectively the head of branch within those particular areas, and their responsibilities, because it's the data that's held within the systems of which they're there. Within the information governance team, just reinforcing that if something's converted into another file format, rechecking. And I think there's a lot of responsibility also with the approver of the information. They're the final check in the process. So it's strengthening at those three levels across the organisation.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Thomas. Gareth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just suppose moving to page 17 of the review findings and the the FOI sample review, and just looking at it there, I know it is covering in my mind quite a narrow time period, April 22 to date, so 3 and a bit years, and just on the basis of that, and the fact that in my view maybe a small enough number of entries are considered, and then breaking that down further, you're taking a very small comparable sort of sample to look into and check, well, out of that FOI and those series of FOIs that information was released, what that contained, and you're content enough that none of those contained any other, concerning bits of information that that shouldn't be released, but it is quite a narrow sample, if you like, and I know there's probably best practice on that, but if you could just explain, the basis of that quite small sample within quite a short time period.
We looked at it internally, and prioritised those that maybe similar to the particular one initially, but we actually did a complete retrospective review back for 4 years.
Yes, 74.
The whole FY request we did ourselves internally, but we thought it was important to also have that independent check by our auditors. So as part of their audit process, we asked them to look at this, and they obviously do it in a sampling, but we had internally looked at every one for the previous approximately 4 years.
And you're content that 4 years is enough, I suppose, is what I'm asking, because in terms, I'm just thinking of the wider trust piece and restoring that.
I think it's a reasonable time period. It was, 4 years a reasonable time period to go back, and that was a period in which we had probably easy access to the records on it. But yes, we felt it was a fairly reasonable time. And 74 is that was all of the requests over that period were reviewed by ourselves. But we did feel it was important that there was that independent check by our internal audit to give that reassurance on it.
Enough, Garth? Okay. Just before we move off, I wanted to ask one, and I know that one of the members had asked, I don't know if it was Aoife maybe, in regard to what the full cost will be, the fiscal cost, which you won't know because obviously there's legal proceedings ongoing, but I would imagine there is a cost so far in regard to investigations, downtime, hours, resources. So is there a cost so far of
there's a cost in terms of additional legal, in terms of what it is. In terms of time, that's really within our, it's existing staff, and we don't have that separately identified. I don't know if we can comment on the legal one, given.
But even in terms of, especially with the legal stuff, I mean, the clock's ticking and all of these things, and there will be a cost. I imagine that it's in year as well as the end of.
In terms of legal, proceedings, as I mentioned, that's an ongoing process on it. As you will be aware at committee, we have sought budget provision. Maybe, Nuala, you might want to comment on the technicalities around that, and that's more from a precautionary provision basis.
Yeah.
Really, if you don't mind, just to address the question around really the cost. To date, we did have independent external advisors, as Stanley's explained. We didn't monitor the cost of in-house staff because those are fixed costs, irrespective. We did have external advisors around legal services, media management and internal audit. There are ongoing legal costs. The other costs have bottomed out, and that work has concluded. At the moment, we're at a total cost of around £38,000, but it will depend. That takes us to sort of early December in terms of legal costs. It depends to what extent that would have to go further.
Okay. The only other question I had was with Gaths. I wanted a bit of certainty in and around how far you tracked back in your investigations to ensure that it wasn't a culture, it wasn't something that happened as a matter of yes, Declan, you have to.
Sorry for not coming in sooner. I suppose just the question is, in the note we got from yourselves, there's 265 people affected, individual data subjects, and 63 of these were commercial or public entities. So, would any of the information, obviously you can't reveal too much, but in terms of sensitivities, but is there any information that was released could be like commercially sensitive or could negatively impact on those enterprises?
There were various commercial parties within the data set, and we had reached out to them in the days following it to allow them to do their own independent assessment around that. As I referred to earlier on, salmonella occurs across various entities on it. The data in itself has its limitations within it in terms of prevalence, and commercial entities are aware of media issues around foodborne pathogens. They're used dealing in that environment, and they've done their own assessments around whether they feel they're risk or not.
And herd and flock numbers are part of the information that was released as well. You know, I suppose this is concerning for farmers who may be concerned that someone then could use or misuse their personal information further down the line. What are you doing with those farmers to help resolve those concerns? Or
we had additionally and separately notified farmers when it became obvious there were herd numbers within it, a herd number and flock numbers. We also advised the department, just from their own security point of views, if there's anything that they needed to consider. That's obviously an issue from the department. Herd numbers themselves arguably are not fully, and if you walk into a market, you can know Joe Blogs, know what the ear tag is in the animal, but we certainly made the department aware of that and allowed them to do their assessment of their own internal process, given that information had gone out, to ensure that there was no risk in terms of access to systems. And my understanding, certainly in terms of something like NIFAS, says that security would not be an issue in terms of that security part of it.
used on it?
Thank you. Just one final point. It's not a question. It's not one final point because I want to move on to the other issue that I made you aware of that I'd like to bring up. But on the ongoing costs, I think, from my perspective, I think it should always include staff downtime when staff have been pulled in for additional training, for investigation, for remedial work and all of that type of stuff. I think that should be a cost that's available and calculated in. It's obviously it's up to yourselves, but I'd prefer to see that and know it if that's okay.
I can understand the point. It's just in terms of our recording system, it's not something we would record within it. But
members,
the points made.
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to move on. So the meeting was about the AFBI data breach, but I did alert AFBI that we would, and I certainly would be interested in asking a few questions in regard to information that was shared allegedly, video and photographs allegedly from AFBI in Hillsborough and their farm. We've had a response from the Minister in regard to that. That was farm practices and that type of stuff. So that came through a whistleblower and that was passed through to the department who have obviously made you guys aware of it. First question I want to ask is, can you confirm, looking at the pictures and the video that were shared by the whistleblower, if they are indeed animals and machinery and the AFBI premises?
Those have all been investigated in terms of them. The majority of them we were able to verify on it. I think there may have been one or two that we were maybe less certain about, but I think it's fair to say the majority we did identify with.
Okay. The committee received a response from the Minister, probably, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, in regard to updating us that there had been a red tractor inspection. It's probably unfair to ask you this because red tractors should really get this question. Could you tell me what the process is for a red tractor inspection? Is it one that is done on spec, or is it one that can be requested?
The red inspections, they cover various aspects of farm management. Whatever. Normally, they're carried out periodically in farms. I understand every 12 to 18 months. But equally, they can be undertaken if there's any concern being raised. In that particular case, we reached out to Red Tractor and invited them on the back of concern and some media requests. We actually invited them to come in and do their inspection on the back of that. Which
evidently is welcome and a good move. But what was the time frame between asking them for the inspection and the inspection taking place?
I don't have that just at hand, but my understanding was it was probably within about a week.
Okay, and just finally, I'll wrap these two into one, if that's okay, Stanley. What, if any, were the findings and recommendations of the red tractor inspection, and what would AFBI say in relation to each of the alleged breaches or the alleged failures?
There were a number of minor non-compliances. These are quite rigorous, and anybody from this is an operating farm, and anybody on a farm environment will know how rigorous those types of inspections can be on it. There were some minor non-compliances identified, and as normal process within that, you have a period of time in which to submit rectifying evidence, typically photographic evidence or whatever. Some of the issues were maybe non-availability of records on the day, individuals was dealing with it, and we supplied that on it. Those have all been closed out and accreditation satisfactorily maintained.
Was there anything in particular that caused you concern? Any of the actions that needed to be taken? Because it looked like there potentially could have been environmental infringements and then animal welfare issues.
Not from the red tractor aspects on it. I maybe will comment if you wish for me a little bit. In terms of the animal health stuff, obviously, photographs were of concern. I fully recognise that. But I think this is a large commercial farm in many respects. There's 300 dairy cows. There's a series of livestock falling up. Injuries can happen to livestock. They happen on every farm. And I want to assure the committee we were aware of much of that. We'd sought evidence from our private veterinary practitioner and reassurance from them. And we also independently reviewed all of those cases and had reviewed it before that ever came to us by a senior vet with a lot of large animal experience on it. And they were fully content that all of the animals have been properly treated promptly and everything. So.
Just for the record, we as a committee did visit Avby about maybe 6 or 8 months ago.
It'd been probably spring of last year, during March.
And it was to be fair, it was a good visit. However, when I saw the videos and the photographs, it was absolutely right to raise those concerns. Just going to ask one, because obviously from a slightly non-farming background, there was a query in regard to what looked like a slurry spreader being used to spray slurry, but what has come back is that it was hard water, apparently. Would that be correct?
There was certainly social media around Avby spreading slurry. It wasn't slurry, and that was investigated by ourselves. It was also checked with NIA. It was what's regarded as dirty water, and we are perfectly within their permitted rules around spreading. I think that was in probably late October after the normal slurry ban had come in. So,
members, does anyone else have any questions in that regard?
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Members content? Thank you.
On the
Sorry.
point of view of the board, Chair, if I might, just to round up, to thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to come and discuss the issues, and just to assure you again, provide additional assurance that the board is fully engaged both with ensuring that the implementations from the data breach investigation are carried out or implemented, and also have actively on our agenda any concerns in relation to Hillsborough. And I think in relation to both matters, ensuring that I think that the workplace culture is one in which people are encouraged to report mistakes, and there's an atmosphere of openness. You have our assurance on that.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, Hillsborough's in my constituency, and I'll just finish with this one. Avby should and does play an important role, but it has to have the confidence, obviously, of all of those right across industry. And there's a lot of tensions in regard to significant pressures, which are not necessarily all are owned by ourselves. But thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll have you back at another time.
thank you.
Okay. Safe travels. Thank you. Members content?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, members. Okay. Was there any actions in regard to that anybody is seeking? So there's enough on the record there, I think. Content? Yep. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 7 is another oral evidence session from NIEA Planning Improvement on the NIEA Planning Improvement Plan. It is their involvement in the planning process that is a matter which we have given considerable attention to, and the committee has previously expressed concern at the effect of planning delays on farm businesses. Members will recall we considered a written briefing on the matter on the 6th of November and have considered responses at recent meetings and our subsequent request for further details and a breakdown of the current backlog of consultations. Members, I refer you to the pack starting on page 96 to the briefing paper from the NIEA's Natural Environment Division, providing an update on its plan for improvement of the planning performance rate when responding to planning consultations. A copy of that plan can be found starting at page 101 of the pack. So I'll allow officials to get their seats, because I know they're all excited about attending committee today.
No, fine.
Oops. You're very welcome to our ERA committee meeting today. I'm going to introduce the officials from NIEA. We have Liz Loughran, Director, Dr. Mark Hammond, Head of Natural Environment Operations, and Teresa O'Neill, Head of Central Services Unit. Thank you very much for your attendance, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll maybe start with just a few opening remarks to set the scene for you and then open for questions, obviously. So, first of all, thanks for the opportunity. We asked to provide an oral briefing on this plan because we see it very much as an attempt to tackle some of the structural problems that we have with our planning consultee system and try and do it in a much more holistic way than we've done before. So obviously fully aware of the scrutiny regarding our performance in relation to the timeliness of the consultation responses, criticisms of our approach to providing standard lines to requests for updates, and also the consequent impact on both economic development but also on individuals who are waiting for planning decisions. So improving the performance and customer service is one of the Minister's key priorities. Within this year's NIEA business plan, a key target was to develop and implement an improvement plan to increase the agency's performance in relation to statutory planning consultations by 15 percentage points, and also to review and then establish revised governance and monitoring arrangements within the agency to ensure the delivery of key actions and targets within the planning improvement plan. So the improvement plan's been developed. The Minister approved it earlier this month. Strategic plan, it really aims to strengthen our performance by improving efficiency, transparency, engagement, but also the quality of advice provided. It is, as I said at the very start, it's intended to be holistic. And I do want it to be a pretty root and branch change rather than just sticking plasters. So we are aiming to increase our performance rate by reducing delays, streamlining the workflow process, improving the quality and consistency of decisions, enhancing communication with stakeholders but also with applicants, increasing staff capability, and you'll know that's been a long-running issue for us, and also resource efficiency, improving customer satisfaction and trust, and also improving compliance with regulations and best practice. So there are 5 work strands within the plan, and there's a number of actions within each strand. So work strand 1, which Mark leads, is about technical advice and guidance. So it's about ensuring accuracy and consistency across all of the department's consultee teams on the technical advice that's provided. It's also about trying to make sure that the advice that we provide is not a surprise, that it's open, that it's transparent, it's accessible for planning authorities and applicants. That will mean that as people apply for planning permission, they know exactly what we're looking for and they know what they'll be judged against. We also hope that that will reduce the number of requests for advice coming to the department, because all the information will be published online, and applicants and planners making decisions will be able to see both our advice and what it's based on and what the outcomes might be. So work strand 2 then, caseload management, all about getting our existing planning teams to effectively manage productivity using management information reporting tools, supporting planning teams in identifying problems and opportunities, and using this to get better internally at allocating resources to cases. So part of that will be about mapping process flows and also trying to improve benchmarking. So workflow 3, strand 3, monitoring and reporting on performance. Purpose of this is to have a clear set of management information that will allow monitoring of performance at appropriate levels. Workstrand 4 is about process and IT systems. So we want to develop a streamlined, consistent process supported by a fully digital system using AI where appropriate. So we've been talking to the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. They have a new system where they've made significant use of AI. It has had the effect of cutting processing times, but it's also improved the link up between sets of advice so that it becomes more consistent. Workstrand 5 then, communications and stakeholder engagement. So enhancing collaboration with DFI, with the local planning authorities, providing timely responses and providing a better service to customers. So I have to make sure that this gets embedded and that we monitor progress against the plan. I've put a new governance structure in place at divisional level, and also the NIEA Management Board is overseeing implementation and monitoring progress. So implementation is at a very early stage. We're just starting now. So we will not meet this year's business plan target in terms of performance improvement. We will meet the associated business plan targets in terms of having a proper plan in place. Just in terms of this year, so this year we've received just over 4,000 planning consultations. We've responded to 86% of those, so currently 587 outstanding. 95% of those outstanding cases have been received within the past 5 months, so that's between now, obviously going backwards, and September 25. We have a statutory target to respond to statutory consultations within 21 days. The current performance rate on that target is 63%. The average time taken to respond is 32 days. But obviously averages are, they hide a wide standard deviation. Our performance rate for the non-statutory cases is 77%. So, there is a lot of work to do, particularly in terms of that statutory rate. It is important to the planning system and to the economy and to customers that responses are issued within a reasonable time scale. We think that the implementation of the plan will ensure that all of the statutory consultations are assessed and responded to within agreed service standards. Our aim really is to deliver timely, clearly evidence-based environmental advice that protects our natural assets while also enabling sustainable development. So that is a kind of whistle-stop tour through the planning improvement plan. I am happy to answer questions now, and will provide you with further briefing later in the year as we go through the delivery process. Chair.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much for that, and thank you for the paper that you submitted. And as you rightly pointed out, it's been an area that the committee has been interested in for some time, and obviously we're lobbied on by a wide variety of people. Anecdotally, I was on the planning committee in Lisburn Council for a very short period of time, around 18 months. One of the names that never come up, and it hasn't come up until probably within this last year to me, was SES. And I don't see SES on the submission, and you certainly didn't talk about SES. Could you, for the committee, outline SES role in relation to NIEA consultations and how their position impacts on your ability to complete consultations?
Mark, do you want to?
Okay, yeah. So just a wee bit of history about SES. So before the review of public administration and the split between the departments, the Department of Environment was the body that was responsible for determining planning applications. As part of that responsibility, anyone who's making determinations for licenses applications has to undertake a habitat regulation assessment. So the department were at that point the competent authority for undertaking the habitat regulation assessment. Whenever the planning function then split to the councils then became the statutory body responsible for undertaking HRA, but they did not have that function within the councils to undertake that role. So shared environmental services were established then for the councils to provide the councils jointly that service. So shared environmental service undertake the competent authority almost role on behalf of the councils, and they're employed by the council, so they're a council body, a council function. They sit within Mid and East Antrim, but they provide that service for all of the councils. So in essence, shared environmental service undertake the habitat regulation assessments for the councils before they make any determinations on an application.
And is that separate from NIEA? You guys have no remit to work with SES. And when I look up planning applications, and this is obviously this is more a council issue, I suppose, I don't see SES as a statutory stakeholder consultee. I don't see that. I don't see them as a statutory stakeholder consultee. But what I am hearing in my ears a lot is there seems to be a stovepipe of planning applications based on the inability of SES to respond. Is that? First of all, is it fair to ask you that question? Well, but it's certainly technically accurate, is probably maybe more the point.
I suppose it's not a matter for the DAERA Minister, so I really can't answer the question. It's, they are a shared service of the councils. They're accountable to the councils. There's no accountability line through to DAERA. No. So they would be giving, in the same way that we give environmental advice to councils, they would give environmental advice to councils.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for starting on that one, because obviously there's a big piece of work that you guys have put into this, and there's compressed timelines because you've targets to meet by April 2026. It's only 3 months away, Mark. You should have a bead of sweat in your head here. You're looking too cool. And I'm sure the members, if you want to pick that SES bit up, work away on it. But it's, I mean, even what I've heard today is giving me significant food for thought in that space. Okay. In regard to the actions, there's one under 5.7, and this is really important, I think. And this is about the applicant being able to understand the system, the jargon and the technicalities and stuff. What does it look like at the moment in terms of developing that communication with potential applicants and stakeholder reviews? How significant is that part of the process?
Okay, at the moment there is significant material out there. It's all out there on the internet, but it's not particularly user friendly, and it's not, if you're a planning agent, you can probably find your way through it. If you're a planning applicant and thinking, do I need an agent? Do I need, what do I need to do? I think it's very opaque in terms of where to start. So within the agency, we're using some of our communications team to look at that, redesign it, and try and make it a step-by-step process for planning applicants, which will really say what we're looking for, why we're looking for it, and what sort of information they need to provide. The complication is that this is all very complicated, so it does take, it takes time to try and signpost it, but I don't want to underplay how technical some of this will still be for applicants. What we will try and do is make the landing pages as simple as possible so that people only read the information they need rather than having to wade through lots and lots. But it's still quite complex and complicated information, and in some cases they will probably need specialist support.
And just to finish that one out, because the target date for that again is April 2026. Yeah. One of the things that I have found most useful, and DAERA, that the Minister has provided one in and around the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, okay? So it's the flowchart. It's just, as you said, there are questions and information that lots of applicants will not need to consider, but it's, you ask the question, does this apply? No. And I just find the flowchart works quite well in that sense. It's like a ready reckoner, and then you can skip the functions. But anyway, I'll leave that one with you. Thank you very much. The committee are very interested in the workforce, and this is right across the civil service, it's right across DAERA, and this is certainly something in previous responses we've got in terms of the numbers that NIE would have to hands, but also some of this is very technical and specialised. Would you like, this will be my final question, by the way, members, in regard to that, could you give me an up-to-date picture of where we are in terms of numbers and also the specialisms? Do those specialisms exist even externally to be attracted into NIEA?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the exact figures. I'll give you a sense of where we are at the moment. Okay, there are a number of planning teams across the department, and the resource situation kind of differs across those teams. The biggest pressure point is a team that sits within Natural Environment Division itself, one of the 7 teams, and that is the team that it receives more than half of the applications, and it's probably the team with the worst performance, with the worst performance statistics. So that is the team that has been hit most in terms of resource pressures. So I mean, the usual story, long-term sick leave, paternity leave, maternity leave. There are 20 staff in there at the moment, the vast majority of which, I'm just looking, 3 of them are non-specialists, but 17 would be specialist scientists. There are currently 17 vacancies. Sorry, 14 vacancies, I'm trying to add up on the fly, 14 vacancies, 13 of those are for specialist scientific posts, and there are another 2 scientists due to go over the next few months. So we have a series of specialist scientific competitions running at the moment, which would fill all of these posts if the competitions are successful. I'm not involved on the competition panels, but my understanding is that the application rate has actually been higher than expected, which is brilliant. The application rate that I'm most interested in is the one at the scientific officer rate, because obviously, you know, you tend to get a pull of people just going up the grades, whereas I really, really need to fill that the bottom grade in order to make a difference in terms of numbers. So those the principal officer, the grade 7 level competition is actually underway at the moment. The rest of them will be completed this year. So I am hoping very much that we will fill those vacancies. We have had issues in the past with people dropping out of competitions once they're offered jobs because of the time sometimes it takes to process competitions. Because these are very specific competitions, because most of the people are most of the people who have applied and most of the posts are within DARA and most of them in fact within the agency. We have a bit more control over it and would hope to run it through quickly because we all need the staff.
Final question has just occurred to me. They are very specific posts and qualifications and specialisms. Is there a process for engaging with the universities across the UK and indeed Ireland to ensure that we have the requisite skills coming through?
We this is kind of a bit outside my area, Chair, but we have as a management team within the agency, we've been talking about ways to reach some of these specialist skills that we need, and looking at, traditionally we have always for most of the scientific staff, it's been post-university recruitment. So we have been looking for for this particular group of scientific staff, are there other routes? You see within DFI, they've had a really successful use of apprenticeships. So trying to learn from what they've done, and also, can we bring people in post-16, post-18, and train them in what we actually need them, rather than putting them through a university degree and then training them. So there is a lot of work going on, but I'm not personally involved in it. I've just been...
Could I just ask for,
Yeah.
because that's exactly where
Yeah.
where I wanted to go, but you got
Yeah.
there before me, so you've
Okay.
stole my punchline. So would you mind, off the back of this, if there's a bit of an update on that, because
Yeah.
I'd be really interested in alternative avenues for young people.
Yeah.
And there are certain demographics and stuff that,
Yeah, I
so
mean-
that need to be targeted, I would
Yeah,
suggest.
I mean, just in terms of expectations, I think it is at quite an early
It's
stage,
fine.
but we are thinking hard about how to widen this out as much as possible.
That's
Yeah.
more than good. Thank you very much, Declan.
Yeah, you're just going back to the your targets, and I'll just mention about ammonia, the ammonia protocol. Like, we are aware of planning applications in the pipeline for over maybe 3 or 4 years, particularly for the poultry sector, and it's actually starting to cripple the industry. So the absence of an ammonia protocol, how does that impinge upon your work in terms of getting applications out the door, and is there any end in sight?
Yeah, well, I suppose in terms of our work, we're a consultee in the process. Certainly, we don't have any cases sitting with us 3 or 4 years. I think we've only got 3 cases where our turnaround's been greater than 40 days in relation to ammonia. I think we do have a couple, but they're all within this year, that still need to be processed. But in terms of the actual length of time it's taken to determine these applications, certainly at the minute last year, yes, we did have the backlog with ammonia, but that's largely been addressed. We as a consultee are now, responding a lot quicker to ammonia cases, so the overall length of time isn't being impacted by our response rates. Our responses may go back and sort of highlight that there's still issues in terms of our responses may go back and say this is reaching certain levels of ammonia in terms of impacts, but that's just the advice we give, so we're certainly not the blockage in the determination of those applications at the minute.
It's just the reason I mentioned about the ammonia protocol is there, I know it's probably, is there any indications of when that will be finalised?
Well, the ammonia protocol that we're working to at the minute, it has been determined as being legally compliant by the OEP, by GNCC and the Planning Appeals Commission. So at the minute we're feeling comfortable that the protocol itself that's being used at the minute is robust protocol. So at the minute we're content with the robustness of the advice that we're providing in relation to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're implementing the protocol, but the protocol is crippling the industry, in terms of farmers not being able to even replace sheds on their farms, and that is crippling the industry. So it's a very serious issue, and I appreciate that you're implementing the rules as they currently are.
I mean, I think that, I understand the frustrations, and I've heard the frustrations particularly around replacements for existing agricultural sheds. I think the Minister has been quite upfront about, the issues that Northern Ireland has environmentally around ammonia, and the route to... I'm not conflating the issues of planning and the issues of ammonia pollution, but one of the ways to unlock development is to have a robust ammonia strategy that gives a pathway to reduction. And I think once you do that, you start to unlock opportunities for development once ammonia is falling. I mean, it's really an issue for our policy colleagues. And they are moving forward with the ammonia strategy at the moment.
Thank you. Okay. And Daniel, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to say, in 10 years as an elected representative, one of the most frustrating organisations I've dealt with is yourselves. Like, the lack of response, the lack of respect for the office that we hold as public representatives that are trying to get answers for the public, that are critical to the economy, critical to adherence with the environmental standards that are being set, people that are in transition. I've never seen a worse organisation. And that is the truth. When I email you, I get responses saying, we are not providing updates at this point. That is unacceptable. People are coming to us to ask for responses who are under significant pressure, not just with planning applications, but the planning system itself is also crying out for a response from yourselves. I have struggled on every occasion to get someone to speak to on the phone. No one returns calls. And one application was going on over a year, everything else was submitted, and yourselves had not responded. When you did respond, you responded to the wrong thing. Still couldn't get on the phone. I had to go to Minister Muir to intervene because I was so frustrated. I spent months trying to get an answer from NEA. Is that acceptable?
No, it's
Right,
the
so-
bottom line. The system of standard lines responses on requests for updates was introduced a number of years ago. I think, I'm not even sure which minister it was, Minister Poots. And it was done at a time when we were trying to carve out as much time for case processing as possible. But it has gone on, it was intended as a short-term measure. It has gone on far too long. It is specifically addressed within the planning improvement plan that we need to be able to provide better quality information to customers and tell them, what is happening in terms of the advice for their application. One thing that I've been looking at some of the practices within the planning authorities themselves, and one planning authority has a rule that when planning applications come in, they will actually go back and say, give an estimate, unprompted, proactively give an estimate of how long it's going to take to deal with that application. So even if say the target is 21 days and you actually go back at the beginning and say, actually, this is going to take us 25 days, I think that is a much, much better service than saying nothing and just acting as if it's a black hole. Now, there is a balance here, and I'm trying to find a way to do this without further impacting on planning applications, on planning advice. So in the over the past 3 months, we've received approximately 163 update requests. That's just the past 3 months. In combination, answering those would take case officers significant time to answer and take them away from the planning.
I get this, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to interject because I don't accept what you're about to say. I have the same level of
I don't know
engagement.
what I'm about to say.
I know what you're about to say. I know what you're about to say, and I'm going to be very sharp with NEA on this. I have dealt with every other statutory agency, NA Water, and all of the others that are required to reply to applications. At no time did I ever hit a brick wall with people not replying to me or not returning calls and not answering. At every single juncture, I've had I've had just a blockage. You're talking about timeframes. Here's an email here for a single house, a single dwelling. They were supposed to respond it went in June, they were supposed to respond by September. It is now nearly February, still no response. One single house. Everything else is good to go. No response. I'm told in an email that you are not responding and providing updates. If I ask for an update on any other application by any other agency, I get that response. What makes you any different? And where's the accountability? If you are refusing to answer public representatives, where's the accountability? It's not acceptable.
It's just before you move on, just one thing, and I genuinely don't mind robust, but I don't think you can second guess what someone's going to say. So if you don't mind, I don't think you should put words in witnesses' mouths. So in that regard, fine with robust.
I want to cut straight to the point,
No,
Chair.
Daniel, just one second.
This is about scrutiny and accountability,
Daniel,
and
one
NAE are not
through the
accountable.
chair, Daniel.
I'm not happy with them.
Listen, robust, I accept, but I think it's unfair to put words in someone's mouth. But there was about 3 or 4 questions in there as well, Daniel. And the points are well made because we all get those frustrations. But if Liz, if you want to respond.
Okay, I think I began by saying I understand the frustrations, and to answer your original question, what I'm balancing is the finding a way to give the updates that people deserve whilst not taking people off the casework. So that's what this new improvement plan process is about. So we are looking at a way of getting, we have an analyst in looking at the current caseload and looking at the way that we have processed work in the past year. So what that is giving me is average time for a particular type of case, how it's done, and what the start and end stages are. So once I have that, I will be able to go back to elected representatives with a time frame saying this is what it takes to process these cases, and therefore I expect the case that you are inquiring about to be answered within such and such a time. By doing it this way, it means that I don't take the caseworkers out, so I can keep the caseworkers analysing the cases. When that's happening, it will improve the output figures. By improving the output figures, I won't have 163 requests for updates because people will already have a response. So that's what the planning improvement plan is trying to achieve.
Well, I hope the improvement plan is successful, but to date we've heard a lot of these promises and commitments before, and it really hasn't lived up to the expected delivery. Just from a point of view of accountability, if anyone in this room or any other elected representative is reaching out to NEA today, who is the person that we should be reaching out to? What is the direct contact method that is most appropriate to get a response? Because I certainly have not got time to be spending weeks chasing after NEA. So I want to know, in terms of getting responses, who directly do we contact?
It depends on the issue, but are we specifically talking about planning?
Yes, on this occasion,
Mark
yeah.
Johnson.
Well, all the correspondence is directed through the planning response team.
Yeah.
So they would be able to direct to the appropriate team, either deal with it themselves, or if it's a technical matter, then they would put that technical issue to one of the technical teams to respond to, depending on what the technical matter is.
But they don't respond. The response is, we are not responding to requests for updates?
It depends if it's an update for when will my response be issued, is the issue that you're talking about. But if you ask there's a technical issue that someone wants to discuss, then there is avenues for officials to actually engage directly on those technical matters. So the issues that have been raised that Liz is talking about is specifically about the update of the question is, when will my application be responded to? That's the issue that we've got the problem with. But technical matters are directed to a technical team, and they will phone someone or engage with them about those technical issues.
9 times out of 10, all of the queries that I have put forward are very insignificant, very minor, and if someone had cited them, would be dealt with very, very quickly. None of the issues I've raised have been exhaustive or in any way difficult.
And as I say, it's not acceptable that we have been putting out those responses that were intended as a short-term measure in the long term. And I've set out the plan that we have to stop doing that and offer proper customer service to customers and to their representatives.
Okay, and just a very final point, Chair.
I'm going to come in.
The 21. This is important, Chair. The 21 day. It's not. This is accountability, John. And we're sitting here with an organisation that is not accountable.
I'll make my comments through you, but I will be answering that. Yes. I will be addressing the tone used to officials today, and I will be addressing accuracies as well. I would appreciate it if the member did not address me across the meeting, did it through you, and if I have an opinion,
obviously the members.
If I have an opinion, the member may well think he'll get away with interrupting people today. He will not be doing it, Chair, with me. I will do my business the proper way, and if I have an opinion, I will express it myself, and I do not need Mr. McCrossan to do it for me.
Okay. Clearly, Mr. Blair, Chair, won't be holding the department to account, given it's his minister.
Okay, that's enough.
That's an accusation, Chair. The member come here to shout and make his TikTok videos and do whatever he does. But he's making accusations.
I'm here to
He's
scrutinise.
completely inaccurate.
John, I'm here to
I'm gonna-
scrutinise.
if you don't stop now, I'll move into-
Sir, no, I'm sorry.
If you don't
The
stop
member
now, I'm
can't
going
be allowed to
Okay,
continue
I'm
to
I'm
shout.
going to ask, we'll suspend the meeting.
I'll address it when you
Suspend the
call me.
meeting. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, and John Blair, please. Thank you.
Chair, I think that we may be, I'm sure not deliberately, of course, conflating some issues. First of all, interpretation of the word robust. I think there are different ideas about what a robust ammonia protocol would be and should be. I think also that the greater number of the public would have the opinion that they do want a robust ammonia protocol, and their position would be, please do not do anything that makes our air quality worse or puts the environment at greater risk than it already is. Can I, through you, ask the officials, is there a conflation of issues developing here between those planning applications that are sitting with councils and not with yourselves, and perhaps those planning applications that have not shown significant betterment in terms of the ammonia protocol, and your response may have been that it doesn't meet the ammonia protocol, and then they are sitting with councils before the applicant is asked to update, amend or come back with a different version?
Okay, I can't I can't give you an evidence-based answer here because we only, if you think about our process as our position as a consultee in that process, the planners come to us for advice. We give that advice to planners. It's uploaded onto the planning portal. It goes back to them, and that's our end in the process. So I don't have any stats where I can see what the planners do once they get that advice. Now, I can have conversations with planners, and I know sometimes that planners have issues and they're looking for advice from other places, for example, SES, but I can't give you evidenced advice on that.
Do you know what proportion of applications would be sent back with the advice that they were unsatisfactory in terms of the ammonia protocol?
I don't know if we have that stat with us, but we can certainly write to you with that.
Yeah, that would be useful.
It's actually quite a low number, but we will write, Chair, to the committee with that statistic.
It would be good to have that.
Yeah.
Also, we understandably, given the representations that committee members from all of the parties, including myself, receive, we will often hone in on one issue around the planning applications that we want responses on. But there's something else that has come out in recent times. Information provided to the committee at our previous meeting showed that, despite the fact that we raised the agricultural buildings and applications on a very regular basis, it was clearly evident that applications for green energy projects seem to have longer backlogs and the longest list of backlogs. Now, whilst the committee doesn't have a responsibility for energy, of course, we do have for the environment. and there are clear environmental implications both locally and globally in relation to those green energy applications. Is there any particular reason why those applications are showing such a long list of delays?
Generally, yes, you're correct. Green energy, particularly wind farm applications, would take the longest time of all our applications. I'll hand over to Mark just for the detail on that.
So yes, renewable energy applications, by their nature, are often placed in some of the most sensitive locations, and they're often some of the most complex type of applications that we deal with. And we also have to deal with new technologies, new advancements, etc., as they are developed in the renewable and green industries. So because of that reason, we actually have a dedicated team that deal with renewable energies. So that team consists of 5 people at the minute. So it's quite a small team that are dealing with all the renewable energy applications. We have identified renewable energy applications as a specific pressure. So we did secure resources for an additional 6 or 7 staff to help with renewable energy and green growth type applications. They are currently sitting within our vacancy list. So they've been in our list for a year or two, but we have identified the problem.
One more.
So we've identified the problem. We've got the resources to address it. We just have to wait for these competitions to go in. But it's the complexity of the issue that is the main thing that causes the length of time it's taken and the number of staff that are there to deal with it.
There's a clearly identified need there in relation to the green energy applications, of course. Final question, and I'm going to take you back to this vacancy list now, and I may have misheard in an answer provided previously by Liz. As I heard through you, Chair, out of a team of 20, there were 17 specialist posts in one of the sections of the agency. And then I heard the statistic that the 14 vacancies. Is that 14 out of the 17 specialist posts in one business area that have vacant posts?
So this particular business area that I'm talking about there's 20 people currently in post, 17 of whom are specialists. There are the complement for the team is 34, so the 14 would be, yeah. Okay.
Clarifies that, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, because that wee break, guys, I'm just going to ask if sorry for this in your hands, but if you could keep your questions as brief as possible for those that have indicated. So, Aoife, you're next.
I'll be very quick. So, Robbie has mentioned the SES and their role, and you have said that they're not accountable to the department. But can you clearly outline the role and decision-making powers of the SES and confirm who they are formally accountable to, who funds them, and when delays occur in policy delivery or operational decision-making?
Okay, they are funded by the councils. As I say, it is not our body, so I'm not. It is set up as a joint. It's set up jointly between the councils, and it would be accountable to the councils and through the councils to the DFC minister.
Okay. And if I'd like to elaborate then on their role would be they would undertake the habitat regulation assessments for the application, and then they would pass that to the determining council, and the determining council would then use that as a material consideration, taking into account all other material considerations whenever they're making their decision. So they don't have any role in determining the application. They provide the required habitat regulation assessment advice to the councils to help them make their determination.
An advisory role
within the councils itself, yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, well look, I'll move on anyway. Thank you for that. Any review whatsoever that comes from NIEA is very welcomed. I come from a rural area where there's lots of applications, serious delays, and unfortunately the delays do come from NIEA. One example that I brought to the committee a wee while ago was a planning application that had to meet certain tests. Those tests were met by a survey being done, which made a delay, but rightly so. That survey had to be done. The survey was then sent back to NIEA, and it sat for 29 months. And like a single application, communication very, very poor. No real communication. Now, in fairness, whenever I did write off to ask what it was, I did get a response back. But those delays are, I don't know how can you even explain those delays. There's no. So I suppose my question is, when can applicants realistically expect to see any benefits of the new planning system, and whether lessons have been learned?
Well, the governance that I've put in place is we will first look within 3 months, so kind of 2 months from now, about improvements that are coming through. We are putting in place a targeted senior resource to look specifically at this, and that person's been given 6 months to implement the plan. So I would hope to see significant impacts on processing times within 6 months.
Okay.
And you can see the targets within the plan all fall within sort of 3-4 months.
And just lastly, if at any stage that we don't see any change, and I am positive, I hope that these changes are implemented and that we do see we do see the changes, and that we get that feedback. If those changes are not, if we don't see any positive change, what happens then?
I have spoken to the Chief Executive, and I think that he's spoken to the Minister. There are a number of other options that we might take, but I can't really say anything more about that. But yes.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Gareth, you're next.
Yes, thank you, and it's good to see you and good to hear from you. So I suppose from my own perspective, I've come from 10 years on planning committee, and twice 2 of those years as chair.
You're on SES, were you?
No,
thankfully declared an interest.
No, but just I suppose on the wider piece, and it's maybe something this committee could look at in a more sort of detailed manner, and that's how you feel as a consultee in the whole planning package. Because the way I see it, and taking the complaints that I take, on a regular basis on it, I don't see collaboration. I don't see a joined up approach. I see councils pushed to the edge in terms of the process they do, and then I don't see a joined up approach. I don't see you guys or SES or DFI or any of those other agencies all collectively looking towards that particular application and go, let's get it done on time, let's get it out the door, let's unlock potential, let's unlock jobs, let's give industry a shot in the arm here in a timely fashion. I don't see that, and I haven't seen it in 10 years. When we started committee at the Review of Public Administration, I said to him, as chair for the first year, I says, let's make ABC the best performing planning department in the country, because we're in competition with 10 other local council areas, and largely we've done quite well in terms of that. But the one thing that lets it down is the wait for responses, and I'm just curious in terms of what NIEA's mentality is towards other consultees, towards applicants and towards councils in terms of the overall approach to planning and seeing it be successful. Because I'm here as an MLA now, I was 20 years as a councillor, I'm still knocking the same doors in my constituency, and I'm still hearing the same issues. And whilst you guys, yes, you're in your jobs, you aren't knocking the doors, you aren't directly hearing from the people, I think there is a real bit of work to be done collaboratively to improve that delivery for people, because it's disjointed, it's not working in my view the way it could be working. And we only have to look at headlines this week in terms of the civil service and the job that has to be done there, and that's everybody's responsibility. And it ultimately ends up with us, in a year and a half's time, going back out on the doors and getting a roasting, no doubt, from people who have been disappointed. So we've all a responsibility here. I'm just curious to understand what your take is on that, and how you see yourselves fitting into that problem solving, because it's not mentioned. Collaboration isn't mentioned in your improvement plan here.
Okay, work strand 5, the communication and stakeholder engagement work. We've already begun that, and that is about improving our relationship with councils. So we already have, we've already had a couple of meetings of a new group of where NIEA senior staff meet with the head planners, representatives of the head planners. It's not all the head planners from every council, and we talk through the issues that have arisen, things that we might work together on, and areas where we might help each other. So that's 2 meetings so far of
Next
that.
one March.
Yeah, next one March. It's been really positive, just in terms of trying to better understand each other's positions. I mean, the councils are our primary customers, but it's not just the councils. So we started also a series of seminars, really, and again this was about understanding positions and trying to crunch through ways of improving things. So we have had the one for councils, we held that in Greenmount last year. We have the next one will be for planning agents, who obviously are playing a really key role in the process, and again it's talking through how they can help us and how we can help them, and trying to improve processing times, but also trying to improve information flows between us. We've also done some ad hoc stakeholder work, which will develop into an ongoing plan. So was it last week before we met the Royal Society of Ulster Architects. So obviously they're big stakeholders in here, so we talked to them about the issues that they were having, thought about some ways that we could ameliorate that, agreed to come back and do regular meetings. There is also, in terms of bringing all of the consultees together, there is DFI convene a planning statutory consultee forum, which brings all of them together, and that is quarterly. It's quarterly meetings, and again that is about DFI saying to all of the statutory consultees within the planning system, how can you work together better?
And I suppose the head of that, consultee organiser, that'll be useful, I think, for this committee to have in front of us to really test and see, what their overall aim and objective is, and how they're measuring success collectively.
Yeah.
That'll be my view. And this is a paid-for service. Don't forget, people are paying a lot of money for their applications direct to council, so it's not like a free service. We can't then go, but you're getting it for nothing. No, you're not. You're paying quite a bit of money for delay in certain circumstances, and businesses then are suffering. So that's really my perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. And Tom, you're the last up.
Thank you, Chair. Look, folk, I think key to all of this is delivery. And that's what the people's looking for, is delivery. Now, we're not getting delivery, and we haven't got delivery for a long time. And the difficulty is that we can't seem to get delivery. And this has been brought through this committee on different occasions whenever we've requested to go to NIEA and see what the delays are, see what the hold-ups are, and so forth. And we still, rather than driving forward, we seem to be pedalling backwards, and that seems to be the serious problem. You come to a rural constituency like West Tyrone, and that's where you see the real difficulties that's associated with this, and I can fully understand why this frustration is coming through today, because this isn't something that has been brought to the attention of NIEA just last week or last month. It's going back years, and this is where the problem is. And we have developers, we have agents, we have businesses, we have single applicants and so forth, all coming to us, knocking on our doors saying, can you get something done for us? In fact, times I would ring the planning officers to request or ask them for an update on a planning application, and they turn around and say to me, we've all in, apart from NIEA, can you contact NIEA for us? to try and get a response back so we can get this out the door, because it's obviously affecting their targets. They're not able to meet their targets either because they can't get out the door. So there has to come a change. Now, you have talked about a need to be able to provide better responses and all of this. You've talked about a plan. When can we see the fruits of that plan? Who is then responsible for the delivery of this plan? You know, it's all right coming and talking to committee about all these things that's away down the road somewhere, but when can we see that put in place and see the benefit and the delivery from it?
Okay, we're responsible for the delivery of the plan. The dates for the various actions are within the plan. The one thing that sits outside the plan that's going to make a big difference is the work that we're doing around recruitment at the moment, because filling those posts has been a long-running issue. So filling those posts, carrying out all of these listed options, you're looking at 6 months to implement this plan. And as I mentioned earlier, that the governance structures I have in place are unless we have within 6 months showed that we can turn the corner on this, we need to do something else, because it is about delivery, as you say.
Okay, you talked there about filling posts and the difficulty there is with filling posts. So if a post becomes vacant, and if I'm right, I heard you saying there's maybe 2 posts going to become vacant sometime, maybe in the next couple of months. So has the process started to fill them posts as yet? What is the process? How long does it take from a post is vacant, or a post coming vacant, until you have somebody in that post, provided that there are people that makes the application for it and so forth? What is that process?
Okay, for the majority of posts within the civil service, we don't advertise them individually. They're filled from lists. So what we have at the moment are a number of, is it three or four scientific boards running. So they will recruit for the whole agency and also parts of DARA at 4 different levels. So when those interview panels are complete, they provide us with lists, and we pull staff from a merit list. So our difficulties generally with the time taken to fill posts is we don't entirely control the process. It's run by HR Connect for us, and HR Connect have a big queue of all of the different competitions that they're going to run. So, for example, I have a particular need at DP and SO grade at the moment, not within planning but elsewhere within the organisation, and I know there's no one available. And when I ring HR Connect and say, well, when can I expect? It's not next week, it's months, and that's very difficult. The good thing about these scientific competitions is although they took a while to get going because they're small and they're relatively low priority compared with the massive cross civil service competitions, because we're recruiting particular sorts of scientists, we really control the competitions, which means that we can do it faster than the general competitions. It's hard to give you a specific answer without explaining the kind of context that we're in. But so say those 2 HSO posts that I've said are becoming vacant over the next few months. The HSO competition that is running at the moment, I hope that if there are sufficient people who applied and then came through, that I will be able to take 2 people from that list to replace those 2 who will leave. The issue will be is if I get to the point at which I need to replace those 2 staff and I go to HR and say, can I have 2 of my scientists from that list? And HR says, sorry, they're all gone. So that's where we start to run into issues. But we are we're in a more optimistic position for scientific staff than we have been for a good few years.
Right, and when can elected members then expect to receive an email or letter from NIA to say, look, here's the contact now. If you have a problem, you have difficulty, here's the person to contact. Here's Joe Bloggs or whoever. This is the person you contact with regard to your problem or difficulty or query or whatever it is.
Well, look, Member McCrossan has passed me a note to say, can we get a direct contact list? So if Chair's okay, I can respond to that to the Chair and share it with everyone. Okay.
Random way of doing business, maybe. I just said what a random way of doing business, but anyway, that's okay.
Okay, happy enough, Tom? Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Teresa. No other questions, Clerk? Anything that we need to wrap up in that? Were there any other, apart from the last piece there, any other thing that we need to? No. Okay, well, I think you'll remember you've been to the committee today. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your submission. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. And certainly in and around the timescales on your transformation plan, there are some of those will close out in April.
Yeah.
So it'd be good if we put it on our forward work programme, we may certainly either by written submission or some way look to work with you in that, because obviously, as members have pointed out today, we are contacted regularly, and we do get in contact with you. And then the other thing is just it was Daniel's question about if we do contact you guys. There might be a preferred way, but is there another way? I know I do this with the council, for instance, where they will give their business owners, their senior responsible owners. Is that a good way of doing it or not? So, because obviously if it goes into a pool and it's a time bound.
At the minute, the process is that you contact the planning response team, and then they'll allocate it, because there is 8 consultation teams, 7 plus another kind of advisory team, and so they're the people then who know, depending on the query, where the case is at, and because the consultation could actually sit with more than one team. Okay. So it's best to go to the planning response team, who can coordinate it and get the response. So, but look, we'll be looking at, it's part of the improvement plan. We have a whole work strand on communication, because we are equally frustrated and we understand the frustration that members have and your constituents. So we have a full work strand on it, and we are reviewing our processes, and we'll come back to you anyway with the contact.
Appreciate that, too. Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much for your attendance. Members, I'm going to suggest a very short 3 or 4 minute break at this stage, and then we'll move back into open session after that. So just going to temporarily suspend. Thank you. Thank you, members. Okay, we are now on agenda item 8, which is the departmental written briefing, the update on the outcome of the review of the schedule to the Rural Needs Act Northern Ireland 2016. Members, I refer you to the Rural Affairs Division written briefing providing an update on the recommendations on the review of the list of bodies and persons set out in the schedule to the Rural Needs Act 2016 Northern Ireland. Starting on page 111 of the pack. A copy of the recommended final step starts at 116 of your pack. This is further to the briefing that we considered on the 3rd of July and provides the rationale for those bodies that have been included or otherwise following input from all of the civil service departments and TEO, with the proposals that the current list of bodies is increased from 37 to 91. Inclusion on the list carries an obligation to produce and publish an annual report detailing how the bodies exercise their statutory duty to have due regard to rural needs when considering policy, strategies and plans, as well as the design and delivery of public services. Those listed will also have access to support from DAERA to assist them in meeting their obligations, including training for rural needs coordinators, staff awareness sessions, access to a rural data hub to better inform decisions, and the enhancement of the rural needs network. The department also recommends that a rural impact needs assessment should be carried out, and this has brought an increase in number of those impact assessments conducted from 157 in the first reporting year of 2018 to 586 in 23-24. Members, the increase in broadening of the bodies on the list is expected to have a positive impact for rural communities and should enhance public transparency and scrutiny around the process of public authorities giving due regard to rural needs. The required amendments in the schedule to the Rural Needs Act 2016 to facilitate the change will be subject to draft affirmative procedure, and the department intends to bring forward the SR proposal as soon as possible. Any comments or you content to note? It is a significant pillar of this committee's work. Okay, agenda item 9. Departmental written briefing launch of the consultation on nature recovery strategy. On page 122 of your pack, there's a written briefing outlining the commencement on the 20th of January for the 8-week consultation strategy and setting the framework. That's for halting and reversing loss of biodiversity. It's on page 127 of your pack. The consultation seeks views on the strategic objectives and actions to develop the nature recovery strategy, or biodiversity strategy as we've come to know it, which sets out how it's intended to meet the international and national ambitions in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland has committed to the Kunming and Montreal Global Diversity Framework to have 30% of our terrestrial, inland water and marine and coastal areas effectively conserved and managed for nature and biodiversity by 2030. In Lagan Valley, with the flooding that we had this last couple of days, Mother Nature also has her part to play in that. The mission and vision of the strategy is to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2032 and have biodiversity restored and regenerated by 2050 through actions contained within 5 strategic objectives. I'll read through them, guys. Well-protected nature and accelerated restoration. 2, reduction of the pressure on biodiversity. 3, sustainable use of biodiversity through nature-friendly policies and practice. Nature valued and mainstreamed across all of government and society. And 5th, building strong integrated evidence and knowledge to enable action and reporting for nature. The Department advises that funding for the strategy includes the Environment Fund, Shared Island Initiative, the Nature Challenge Fund and Farming with Nature, and that other options will be explored, including the potential for private funding. Once the consultation's responses have been assessed, the Department will provide further update. If any further comments on that, content to note. Thank you, members. Also on this matter, I refer you to page 292 of the table papers, the correspondence dated the 27th of January from the RSPB in relation to strategy outlining its concerns, and the proposals within it do not go far enough to restore nature and are calling for it to be strengthened. Members, do you have any comments on the RSPB views? Are you content to note? And the members agreed to forward the RSPB's letter to the Department. However, I presume RSPB will reflect these views in their own response to the consultation. Content. Thank you, members. Agenda item 10, written departmental briefing on the NIEA NI Habitat Regulations report for 1924. It's on page 169 of your pack, and it's NIA written briefing providing an update on the implementation of the Habitat Regulations. A copy of the report starts at page 174. It reports on the conservation status and trends of the Northern Ireland's terrestrial and marine habitats of birds and non-bird species and the main pressures that they face. Members, the briefing and the report is embargoed until tomorrow, and so if any members wish to discuss it further, we would need to go into closed session, but I'm going to suggest that we return to the matter next week, unless someone has... Yep, happy enough? We'll return to it next week. Thank you, members. Agenda item 11 is correspondence. Members, there is a correspondence memo for reference at page 596 of the pack, and I'm going to refer to a few of those items. If there is anything else that members want to discuss, please do bring them to my attention. At 11.4, for instance, I refer you to page 693 of the pack, to correspondence from the Minister dated the 22nd of January, including a communique regarding his attendance at the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Interministerial Group meeting on the 24th of November of 2025. Discussions covered water quality, focusing on nutrient management practices and behavioural change, effective border and biosecurity arrangements, whilst the SBS agreement is being negotiated and implemented. The Fisheries and Coastal Growth Fund, funding needs for the EFRA sector and the resilience of the CO2 supply chain for the agri-food industry. Any comments you content to note? Okay, at 11.8, refer you to page 701 of the pack, to correspondence dated the 22nd of January from the RSPB regarding the new land eligibility rules for farm sustainability payments. It states that whilst it welcomes the development, the RSPB believes there remains limited incentive for farmers to actively manage, create or restore these newly eligible areas. Any comments to make? You content to note? Content to note. Thank you. At 11.10, I refer you to table paper starting on page 295 to the Office of the NI Executive in Brussels report, October to December 2025. Agricultural policy development and environmental matters that will be of interest to the committee can be found on pages 10 to 16 of the report. If you have any comments, you content to note? Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 11 then is the forward work programme, members. I refer you to the draft forward work programme starting on page 339 of the papers. Are you content that it's published? Members, is there any other business? Okay, members, date and time and place of next meeting will be Thursday the 5th of February, 10 a.m. in room 21. Just going to ask committee agreement.
Chair, sorry,
yes.
we wrote the chair's brief. Obviously now there's the meeting on Monday.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, so the next meeting isn't Thursday, the next meeting's on Monday. Thank you, clerk. It's just testing you there. Okay, and the meeting after that will be our regular meeting.
Where will we be meeting?
This room. Senate Chamber on Monday. Senate Chamber.
Senate Chamber at 9:30.
Is that meeting 9 or 9:30?
9:30.
9:30.
As I said, Tom, if members are sort of a wee bit delayed, it'd be really good to start at 9:30, quarter to 10. I will be starting by quarter to 10 if members aren't. all there, but try and aim for that.
Try and be there as soon as can. I leave my children to school.
Spring and
or make sure they're at the
people
door
are
and
gonna
ready
be
to
able
school.
Hey, members?
Yeah.
Okay, just ask for committee agreement. We're going into a closed session to consider the summary of evidence table with our Senior Assistant Clerk Glenda and Bill Clerk Oving. The meeting is going to adjourn. Yeah.
Chair, sorry, I just noticed, apologies to mess this up, but should be okay, but prior notice already, I am leaving my car in to be serviced after 9, so
Monday?
It's Sydenham, so it
Right.
should be, but if I'm 5 or 10 minutes late, go ahead, because it won't be much.
Yes, no
Right.
problem. Well, I will try and hold it.
Don't wait for me, just go ahead, it's fine.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, when we go into closed session, we won't be returning to public session. Members, are you content? Okay, thank you.